This is a lecture from OpenTuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
All right. In the previous lecture, we went through part A of the example, traditional costing, and we got those costs per unit and those profits per unit. Now, as I said, we're now going to look at part B, which is exactly the same question, the same problem, except we're going to do it in what I think you'll agree is a somewhat better way. We're going to do activity-based costing. And again, the object is to get the cost per unit, so let's set up the cost cards as we did before. We've got materials. I've lost it already. $5 for A, $10 for each of B and C. We've got labour. 2 hours for A at $5 is 10, and 1 hour each for B and C. So far exactly as before, but it's the overheads we're going to deal with separately, or differently, I beg your pardon. Now here we certainly need workings, so let me leave space. The workings. And what I'm going to do, instead of just absorbing the overheads in total as we did before, we're going to look at each bit of the overhead separately and decide what the most sensible way is of charging it to the each of the three products. Now, there are two ways you can actually set this up, which will end up giving exactly the same answer. I'll mention the other way later, but I'll set it up what I think is the easiest, the quickest, the safest. What I'm going to do for each overhead, the first one says setup costs. The total is 90,000, and I'll explain in a minute what the word means. But I'm going to decide out of that total, how much in total should we charge to each of the three products, A, B and C. Now let me explain what we mean by setup costs and then how we actually arithmetically do it. These are standard words you may see in the exam, but it's these words, so don't be worried about the English if it's a problem. Once I've explained it, it should make sense. But we already know we're producing three different products. But let's assume they're all made on the same machine. And what we do is we perhaps set the machines up to make product A and produce maybe 1,000 product A's. And then we decide to use the same machines to make a few product B's. So we need to reset the machines, and similarly a few products. So we keep making batches of maybe a few hundred or a few thousand each time. But every time we change to a different product, then we need to set up the machines. Well, maybe we employ 2 or 3 men whose job it is to set up the machines. Maybe they have an office. And all of this is costing money. Their wage is the cost of their office. But in total, all the costs involved with setting up the machines, which is an overhead, is 90,000. Now, I want to charge that to the three products, and what would be the most sensible way? Well, if you look at what we call cost driver data, they're telling us how many times we're setting up. And so wouldn't it be sensible to charge that 90,000 depending on how many times we're setting up the machines for each of the three products? And so what we'll do, we will absorb it, but rather than waste our labour hours which have nothing to do with it, we'll work out the cost per setup we know it's 90,000 we're spending in total. How many setups are there? 10 for A, 13 for B, 2 for C. So a total of 25. And therefore the cost of each setup effectively 90,000 divided by 25 is 3,600. And now let's charge it to the three products based on the number of times we're setting up for each of them. So A needs 10 setups, and at 3,600 each time, that's 36,000. We'll give to A. Similarly, B needs 13 setups, so 13 at 3,600 each time is 46,800. And finally, C needs 2 setups. Well, at 3,600 each time, that's 7,200. So I hope that made sense. It's not difficult arithmetically. Obviously, I'm taking a while because I'm trying to explain, but otherwise, I hope that is sensible. And it's what you might call fairer. Let's go through the next one. Receiving. In total, we're spending 30,000. But again, I want to charge that 30 to each of the three products in the fairest way. Look at the cost driver data. It tells us there the number of deliveries that are received. So this must be receiving material into our factory. And maybe we've got, again, 2 or 3 people whose job it is to check in the material. Again, maybe they need an office and so on. So we've looked at all the costs involved for that bit of our operation. And the total came to 30,000. And what would be the sensible way of charging it to the 3 products? Well, surely, since what's causing it, the number of receipts we get, we'll work out the cost per delivery received. So there's 30,000 in total. How many deliveries in total? 10, 10 to 22. And so, effectively, how much is each delivery costing us? I get 1,364. Now, I have rounded it there, which may seem a bit of a contradiction when I said in the previous lecture that when you're working out cost per unit, normally do it to the nearest cent. Here, though, it isn't cost per unit. And if you're patient with me, you will see at the end, the fact I've rounded it a little bit will make no difference at all. I mean, when you're doing things in total like this, normally do it to the nearest dollar. If you want to do it to the nearest cent, fine. Just take that little bit longer. And again, you will see at the end it makes no difference. However, I've rounded it, so now let's charge it to the products. A, there are 10 deliveries, so 1364 is 13640. B, 10 deliveries, 13640. C, 2 deliveries, 2 times 1364 is 2728. Now again, some of you will be saying, no, it doesn't add up. Of course it doesn't add up. It's a few dollars different in total because of the rounding. If it upsets you, by all means, do it to the nearest cent. But as I said earlier, if you're patient, you'll see why when we come to the end, it doesn't really make any difference. Next one, dispatch. Total 15,000. Well, now I should obviously be able to go faster because it should be clear by now what I'm doing, and it does then become very repetitive. If you look at the cost driver data, we're told number of orders dispatched. And so the obvious way to absorb is cost per dispatch. In total, 15,000. How many dispatches in total? 20, 60. And so the cost per dispatch, 15,000 over 60, is 250. Charge it to the products. Each of them has 20 dispatches, so 20 times 250 is 5,000. No problem. And incidentally, I'm not as stupid as I may look. I could have written 5,000 down immediately, because just looking at the question, since there are an equal number of dispatches, there must be an equal cost. So, be efficient, don't waste time. I certainly wouldn't have bothered writing down cost per dispatch unless this question specifically wanted it. Clearly read the question. If it wants it, then you do it. Finally, machining. Total 55,000. And how are we going to charge that? Well, again, back to the cost driver data, which you will be given in the exam, don't worry. We told machine hours per unit. But be very, very careful. What too many do is they stop thinking. I said a minute ago when we did dispatch, it starts to become very automatic. It's the same rule each time. And so what a lot of people do is say, and don't, if you're doing this with me, don't copy this down because it's wrong, I'm going to change it. They say, oh, let's work out the cost per machine hour. 55,000. How many machine hours are there? 2, 2, 2, 6. And off we go. Well, no. Don't forget with the previous ones, with dispatch, we did it on the total number of dispatches. Oh, the previous one, the total number of receipts. We are going to do it on machine hours, but we're going to have to do it based on the total number of machine hours for each product, not the machine hours just for one unit. And so we need a little bit of workings. We are going to do the cost per hour. It will be 55,000 divided by the total number of hours, but how many hours are there in total? As workings, we're doing 20,000 units. And how many machine hours? 2 hours per unit, so total 40,000. B, we're making 25,000 units, and again, machine hours 2 per unit is 50. And C, 2,000 units, 2 again, which is 4. And so in total, we're working 94,000 hours. And therefore, have I added up right? Yes, I have. Yep, 94. So the total, the cost per hour of it, 55,000 divided by 94 is, well, of course, here, I am going to have to leave some decimals, 0.585. Despite what I said earlier, I'm certainly not going to round that to $1. That'd be ridiculous. And now we can charge it as always. How much to A? Well, remember A, there are 40,000 hours in total. So at 585, we'll charge in total 40,000 times 0.585 is 23,400. B, in total 50,000 hours at 0.585 is 29,250. And finally, C, 4,000 hours, 0.585 is 2,340. So that took slightly longer, but I just warn you, if you're doing one of these, do be careful. It's very easy to do what I did initially without thinking. And it's such a shame, given this, again, the arithmetic itself shouldn't be the problem. But now I can finish it. Sorry, I just need space here. If I add these up, the total overheads, of course, 90, 30, 15, 55. The total 190,000, as we knew. But we now have split it between the products. Sorry, just so I can see them all. So for A, the total is 36,000 plus 13,640 plus 5,000 plus 23,400, 78,040. For B, what is it, 800? 13,640. $94,690. And for C, $17,268. Now again, because of that rounding earlier, it won't add up to exactly the right figure. But just let me make sure it's close to it. Then I haven't made a silly mistake. 78,040, 94,690, 17,268. Yeah, it's $2 different. You're about to see why. I don't really care. But there's the total we're giving to each product. But we're not quite there, because remember, on the cost cards, I want the overhead cost per unit. And so the final step in our workings, we know the total cost for each. How many units are we making of each? A, if you look back at the question, was 20,000 units, B 25,000 and C 2,000. And so the overhead cost per unit, we simply divide. For A, 78,040 for 20,000 units is $3.90. And here I certainly will go to the nearest cent, because we're now getting to unit costs. B, 94,690 divided by 25,000 is $3.79 per unit. And finally, C, 17,268 divided by 2,000 is $8.63. And now I can go back to the cost cards and finish them off. So let's see if I can remember them going up and down the screen. 390 and 379. 390 for A, 379 for B. And what is it for C? 863. And so on this approach, the total cost for A is $18.90. For B is $18.79. And for C is $23.63. I'm not going to wind back to part A, but they're obviously different costs. We've taken a different approach. We can discuss it afterwards. But remember, this question also wants the profit per unit. The selling price we're given is 20 for each. And so the profit this time for A is $1.10. For B, it's what, in my head, $1.21 per unit. For C, it's loss-making, a loss of $3.63 a unit. And of course, if we take this approach, things have changed a bit. You see, when we did the traditional approach, it appeared to be A that was the problem. A was loss-making, B and C were okay. Turns out with activity-based costing, with this approach, A and B are actually profitable, and it's C that's the big problem. And we need to investigate. Can we increase the price and make it profitable? Can we cut costs? Or should we even make C? It appears to be loss-making. Now, in real life, the method we use, there's no rules. You know, the management accountant does whatever they think is more sensible, more useful for the business. But I'm sure you'd agree, activity-based costing is a more sensible way of dealing with our overheads. Okay, well, there's the arithmetic. I think that any problem there is more a question of reading carefully and just time. However, if you watch the introductory lecture, you know about 50% of the exam isn't arithmetic, it's discussion, writing sort of thing. So, although we'll have a break, the final lecture on this chapter, I'll look at paragraph 3 of the notes. Let's discuss, may seem obvious, but it's still quite important, the advantages of activity-based costing and the problems that can be in real life. So I'll have a break and then come back to it.